Like everywhere else around us, the University of North Carolina at Pembroke is filled with art. Sculptures, paintings, music, and dance surround us every day, everywhere we go. But what do people consider art? What do they notice? According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the definition of art has changed throughout the years. Back in the 1300s, art was considered to be a skill. It was considered to be a display, application, or expression. But in the 1600s, the definition of art changed to what is now considered the expression or application of creative skill and imagination, meaning that art is typically shown in a visual form such as painting, drawings, or sculptures. Such forms of art display a work's appreciation and beauty, which can sometimes display emotion. These works are all around us and can sometimes go unnoticed, but not visually. Many people see art and admire its beauty without visualizing the work and meaning that went into creating such a masterpiece. To other people, the art of seeing and noticing certain things is something that has to be learned. As people, we only notice what is relevant to us at that precise moment. We get caught up on where we're going and what we are doing without observing our surroundings. People here on campus walk past some form of art every day, such as sculptures, paintings, musicians, dance, and much more. But each person experiences art differently. What they notice is what shapes their mind. Professor Carla Rokes shares her thoughts on art going unnoticed.
In terms of art going unnoticed, I think that when you gain a greater appreciation for art and you open your mind up to new ideas about art and new perspectives, it becomes more noticed, because then you see it more around you. You know, where you may have looked at art through a more narrow view, as you open your mind and appreciate art more, you start to look at it through a different lens.
So what do people and faculty notice and consider art when they walk around campus? Are we too busy to see what's around us? We spoke to a few people to share their views on why they think art can sometimes go unnoticed.
I think probably because they're too busy, jumping from class to class, or, being on the go.
I think it's because they're more focused on other things. Like, they're focused on, I need to get to lunch, I need to get to class, I've got such and such that I got to get done before tomorrow or something like that. And it's just not on their mind. And I think that if people really focused and just took the time to stop and look around at what's going on, they would really appreciate the art that's around them.
We also spoke to students and faculty about what kinds of art they notice around campus.
I see a lot of the sculptures outside the art buildings and around campus. That's pretty cool.
Art can be found in a lot of different ways. I mean, if you look in the parking lots, you think about how much design work went into somebody's car. But also, if you look to anything in nature, there's certainly inspiration for art. So I think art is all around us in some capacity.
When I walk through campus, I notice a lot of people singing, playing instruments. I've seen people dancing and singing in the cafeteria during lunch before, and I think it's the coolest thing ever because people aren't afraid to express their art form and their individuality.
A lot of work goes into making and designing a work of art. We often see art but do not take the time to understand its meaning or how a certain project or sculpture was made. Graduate assistant Brandon Tart tells us the meaning about his representational sculpture that is on display at our local Pembroke True Value Warehouse.
The title of it is A Random Walk on the Least Squares, which are terms borrowed from mathematics. If you look up those terms online, you'll see how the graphs for those two different forms of math are arranged in a way that are similar to the form of the sculpture. So there's that element of it, but it's a commemorative piece. I only arranged it that way because it was something that I could borrow from visually and then correlate that with something that is in another field. So I think math and art are integrated, and the geometry of it seems to match up with the notion of it being related to something mathematical to begin with, or at least geometric. But it's a commemorative piece. The best way to put it is it's symbolic of the Lumbee tribe. My goal was to commemorate the people who established the university, that being the Lumbees, because it was originally a normal school that was created for the Lumbee population here. Later it turned into a school and transitioned from something that was specifically for them, and then they opened up the doors. But the Lumbees have committed a lot of time, money, life, energy, you name it. They've given a lot to the community, and the university is here because of them. So it was something that I wanted to do in order to give back, you know. So I think it was just something as an artist that I wanted to do.
Tart sculpture took a lot of pre-planning and sketches to create. It is this kind of determination and hard work that often can go unnoticed when it comes to works of art. Tart goes on to explain the meaning of his sculpture.
If I were to go back to the Renaissance era, I mean, it's clear that art was extremely important to them then, but if you look at what was going on at the time, then you kind of get a sense as to why art was so much more valued by those people. And I guess the best way to put that is the art of the Renaissance followed a narrative that everyone was to some extent aware of, and everyone is kind of broad, so let's just say a majority of the people were probably aware that Christendom or Christianity played a vital role in shaping the thought and the culture and the belief systems of the people at the time. So the investment into that narrative, that is the biblical narrative, was something that generated the art of that era. Today, the narrative, our social narrative, or what kind of drives humanity, it seems to be built more on secular principles, and so there's not really a dialogue or some sort of a narrative code or a text that is descriptive of our time. Even though Christianity, for instance, is still present and people are aware of it, the value of that is what's less. And so the narrative, which would have at one point, or did at one point, establish the artwork of that period, since it's become less important, since it's become less valuable due to the presence of a secular worldview, you're finding art that deals with abstract concepts that people aren't either as aware of, or they haven't been made aware of it, or they just don't value. For instance, as I said earlier, it was titled A Random Walk on the Least Squares. Well, so to some extent, the work is extraordinarily random, in and of itself. It's geometric, so when a person looks at it, they may say, what is that exactly? But if you look closely at that sculpture, you'll actually find that in the front of it, I've worked the Christian cross directly into the face of it. So that's my way of pulling back from the Renaissance era, at least a narrative that established the art then, and bring it into the abstract art world that we live in today.
So what do people consider art? The meaning of art continues to be debated. Professor Dr. John Labadie expresses his thoughts on the meaning of art.
I think it's difficult to make really global statements about how people see things, how everyone understands something, or whether nobody understands something. And there's a big distinction here between art and design. Design is around us everywhere. I wouldn't consider this a fine work of architecture. Locklear Hall is a very well-built building, a bunker, as somebody once called it, but it's not a work of architectural genius.
According to the article, What Does Art Mean? In the website boundless.com, the definition of art has evolved over time and varies based on context. Anything can in fact be art, and the term continues to evolve. People did not consider a can of Campbell's soup to be art until world-famous Andy Warhol placed the concept in the world of art back in 1962. Art is not just about painting or sculpture. It is the simplest way of communication and a vehicle for expression in which a person can express their inner self and make something beautiful of it. Associate Professor Adam Walls shares with us his passion as an artist.
My passion as an artist is to do just that, to try to find different ways to express myself, but also find ways that I find to be physically engaging. I have to find work that causes me to think, but also gives me a certain amount of physicality. I like the idea of creation. I like physically making things.
Every person has their own perspective and views about art. We have gone around campus and talked to some faculty and students to share the insight on what they consider art.
I consider art to be anything that is beautiful, whether it be music, portraits, drawing, sculptures, things like that.
An expression of a person's like personality, like the way they view like the world, like their nature, they express their emotions through their art, like drawing, sculpting, painting, singing, like dancing and stuff like that.
Art is an opportunity for expression, for a person to talk about, without using words, talk about things that interest them, whatever that may be. It might be something incredibly personal, or it might be just a means to make financial ends for them to make their own living by making artwork for other people. So it would be personal to them in that way.
Art is creative work made in a media for personal or expressive purposes. Other things, but at least that.
Art is experiential. It's sensory. It's captivating. It's contemplative, provocative. You know, it's something that holds your interest in a way that can be transformative. So whether it's improvisational jazz or live theater or a very stunning painting, you know, it transcends, you know, time and space. It just holds you. It holds you still, and it makes you think.
Art is everywhere in many ways and forms. Whether we notice it or not, it makes up the majority of our surroundings everywhere we go. Some people, such as Jonathan Arp, use art as a way of expression and joy.
Started marching band with my high school in the 10th grade, playing bass guitar, but I've always been more drawn to the color guard because they're the visual aspect of it. It's what everyone notices, and I really enjoy the feeling that I get from doing it. It's like dancing, but it's just different, you know. I don't really know how to explain. It's very free. I feel very free when I do color guard.
We discussed how people see and consider art, but what is art to an artist? Professor Carla Roques shares her views on what art is to an artist and how progress can help people understand and notice art better.
And for the artist, I think art is about conveying a message through whatever medium they're using. But for the viewer, it's very subjective and personal. So there's that connection between the maker and the person receiving the art that can be often very profound too. I think, you know, in terms of art, what inspires us can also be looked at in terms of process, you know, how the artist made the work, the materials, the materiality of it. You know, they're caught up in the oil paint, the thick brush strokes or what have you. There's that connection that the viewer makes with the material. That's really important because when we think about process, we want to think about how the artist made the work, where the artist was, maybe what they were doing at the time, and we get curious about the way something was executed. When you gain a greater appreciation for art and you open your mind up to new ideas about art and new perspectives, it becomes more noticed because then you see it more around you. You know, where you may have looked at art through a more narrow view, as you open your mind and appreciate art more, you start to look at it through a different lens, you know, in an unconventional way.
No matter what form or style it is, art can be found just about anywhere. It is right before our eyes on a daily basis and brings beauty to the world we live in. What was once considered a skill is now a way of expression and visual communication. Art, it's everywhere.